She thought he was just another nervous intern, awkward, overwhelmed, and destined to be eaten alive by a ruthless corporate culture. So she did what no one else bothered to do. She helped him, protected him, believed in him. What she didn't know was that he was the new CEO, in disguise. And while the rest of the company trampled over decency, he was watching. Now, the woman they mocked is about to be the one they answer to. Hello, family. Welcome to True Life Stories. Please subscribe and leave a like for us. It means the world to us. Also share this video to your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. The elevator dinged open on the ground floor of Lintech Enterprises, and Amelia Rivera stepped into the building with a practiced smile and tired eyes. She walked with the quiet determination of someone who had long learned how to become invisible. Her tailored blouse and conservative slacks were always neat, her hair pulled back into a simple bun. She dressed like someone who didn't want to be noticed, and in this office, that strategy had helped her survive. It was 7:46 a.m. The sun was barely warming the streets outside, but Amelia always came in early. Fewer people in the break room meant fewer comments. Fewer chances for someone to accidentally dump their coffee near her desk or forward a cruel meme referencing her quietly ambitious nature. Her cubicle was in the far corner of the 10th floor, near the printer. Close enough to be useful, but out of sight during office tours or when executives visited. She headed toward the turnstiles, badge in hand, when she noticed him. A young man stood in the middle of the lobby, staring up at the ceiling like he was searching for answers. His dress shirt was slightly wrinkled at the collar, and the leather strap of a cheap messenger bag dug awkwardly into his shoulder. In one hand, he held a plastic folder. His name tag, clipped askew, read Jaden Intern. People flowed around him like water around a stone. A few glanced his way, some with faint sneers, others with indifference. Not one person stopped. Amelia hesitated, debating whether to intervene. She told herself it wasn't her job. HR should have assigned a buddy. But when she saw a smirk cross the face of Colin Myers, head of business strategy, who deliberately bumped the young man's shoulder on his way through, she sighed and walked over. "Hi," she said, gently tapping his arm. "You look a little lost." Jaden blinked, grateful for the interruption. "Yeah, I think I was supposed to meet someone from HR, but I've just been standing here. No one really said anything." "That happens," Amelia said softly, already familiar with how the company threw new hires into the deep end. "You're not the first to be forgotten on your first day. Come on, I'll take you up." He smiled, sheepish. "Thanks. I'm Jaden. Amelia. Marketing. Don't worry, you'll learn quickly that half the job here is just figuring things out yourself." The elevator doors closed behind them with a ding. Jaden stared at the digital panel, counting up the floors. "So what's your department?" she asked. Still figuring that out. I think I'll be rotating a bit, kind of like shadowing different teams." She nodded. "That's usually the case for interns. It's rough at first, but if you're lucky, you might land under someone who isn't a complete narcissist." Jaden chuckled nervously. "That bad? You'll see." They stepped out onto the 10th floor, Amelia's battlefield. The open-plan office buzzed with the low hum of fluorescent lighting and passive-aggressive energy. Eyes flicked toward them, brief, judgmental glances. Amelia felt it, as always, like static in the air. But today she wasn't alone. She showed Jaden the break room, the printer that always jammed, the best route to avoid being seen by upper management when sneaking in late, and the HR office that never answered emails. When they reached an empty desk by the windows, far from the chatter and gossip, she gestured. "This one's usually free. Nobody wants it because it's near the draft from the vent, but it's quiet." Jaden settled in, placing his folder carefully on the desk. "You really didn't have to do all this." Amelia gave him a crooked smile. "Someone has to." As she walked back to her own desk, she didn't know she had just spoken to the new CEO. She didn't know that Jaden Cole, the man who could fire everyone in the building with a sentence, had just been seated in the corner like a nobody. She only knew that he looked overwhelmed, and for once, she had been in a position to help. Jaden watched her go, curiosity flickering in his eyes. She hadn't treated him like an inconvenience. She hadn't tried to impress him. She hadn't ignored him. He made a mental note, Amelia Rivera, a name he wouldn't forget. And so, on a regular Monday morning, in the cold and glassy lobby of Lintech Enterprises, something quietly remarkable had begun. The following day, Jaden arrived earlier than most. He had spent the night poring over the employee files and security footage, things only a CEO could access. But in the morning, he was back in plain clothes, a wrinkled tie, and his intern badge still dangling like a joke around his neck. No one looked twice, except Amelia. "Good morning, intern Jaden," she greeted as she poured herself coffee from the break room machine, the one that sputtered every third cup. "Survived day one?" Jaden offered a crooked smile. "Barely. Got lost twice. Got ignored 4 times. "You're learning fast," she said, handing him a paper cup. "That's basically the training manual around here." They sat for a moment at the chipped counter in the break room. Amelia tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, clearly tired but too proud to show it. Her blazer had a small stain near the cuff, probably from working late again, and her eyes carried that look of someone who never quite rested. "You've been here long?" Jaden asked. "Almost 4 years." He blinked. 4. She nodded. "I started as a content assistant. Now well, technically I'm a marketing associate. But unofficially, I write copy, manage digital campaigns, and do the work my manager takes credit for." Jaden laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. "That sounds exhausting." "It is," she said simply. "But I didn't come here to make friends. I came to grow. It's slow, but I'll get there." Jaden watched her with quiet interest. There was no bitterness in her voice, no anger, just tired resilience. He found himself wondering how many others in the building shared her story, but didn't have her grit. Their conversation was cut short when a tall woman with 2 red lipstick and a voice like an emergency buzzer walked in. "There you are," barked Diana from HR. "Jaden, right? You were supposed to check in with compliance yesterday. You need to sign the NDA and go through orientation. We don't have time to babysit interns." Amelia stood slightly. "Actually, I was showing him around. He didn't get the schedule from onboarding." Diana didn't even glance at her. "I was talking to the intern." Jaden bit back a response and nodded. "Of course. I'll take care of it." Once Diana was gone, Amelia gave him a sympathetic look. "She's delightful, isn't she? I'm beginning to think I should have picked a less glamorous job. Like grave digging." She grinned, and for a moment, the dull gray of the office didn't feel so oppressive. Later that day, Jaden found himself assigned to a desk near the product development team. They tossed him a company brochure and told him to get familiar. The phrase had no direction, no context, just a lazy way of saying, "Stay out of the way." He obeyed. For a while. Around noon, his stomach growled, but when he made his way to the lunchroom, he quickly realized he wasn't welcome. Small clusters of employees huddled at tables, talking in hushed tones. A few glanced his way. One woman giggled. A guy from finance nudged his friend and whispered something while pretending to take a bite from his sandwich. Jaden stood awkwardly, tray in hand. Then he heard Amelia's voice. "Over here." She was sitting alone in the corner, her salad half-touched, her phone next to her with a half-written email on screen. He sat across from her, lowering his tray like he was intruding on sacred ground. "Thanks," he said. She shrugged. No one should have to eat alone on their second day. Especially not in a company full of hyenas. Jaden glanced around. "They really don't like new people, huh? They don't like anyone who reminds them of who they used to be," she said. "Hungry. Hopeful. Replaceable." He chewed in silence for a while, then asked, "How do you deal with it?" She looked up, eyes steady. "You survive. Then, when you finally get a seat at the table, you change the way the table works." Jaden didn't respond. He was too busy memorizing every word. That afternoon, a meeting was called by the marketing manager, Rachel. Amelia invited Jaden to sit in, not because he was invited, but because, as she put it, interns should learn more than how to make copies. As the meeting began, Rachel sauntered in late and spent the first 5 minutes boasting about a client dinner. She then turned to Amelia without looking her in the eye. "Did you bring that analytics report?" "I emailed it last night," Amelia replied, sliding a copy across the table. Rachel picked it up and skimmed it without acknowledgement. Jaden watched as Amelia's idea, a rebranding pitch she had floated a week ago, was casually attributed to someone else during the discussion. No one objected. Amelia just nodded and took notes. Later, as people filtered out, Jaden leaned in. "That was your idea, wasn't it?" She didn't look up. "Does it matter?" "Yes," he said. "It does." She offered a small smile. "Well, thank you for noticing." When the day ended, Jaden sat alone in the elevator, headed back to the ground floor. He stared at his reflection in the mirrored panel, rumpled shirt, scuffed shoes, Intern badge crooked again. But in his eyes there was fire. They had no idea who he was. But he knew exactly who she was. And tomorrow he would return, not just as the intern, but as the observer. Watching, recording, waiting. Because while the rest of the office had treated him like furniture, Amelia Rivera had treated him like a human being. And that, he was beginning to believe, would make all the difference. By the end of his 3rd week, Jaden had seen enough to know that Linteca's pristine glass walls and minimalist branding were nothing more than a facade. Behind the glossy exterior was a rotting system, infested with vanity, guarded by egos, and fueled by fear. He had walked into this place in disguise thinking he'd observe a few internal inefficiencies and corporate hiccups. But what he found was far more insidious. This wasn't just a workplace, it was a war zone in business casual. Jaden sat silently in a cramped conference room, his intern badge still dangling loosely from his neck, his notepad filled with doodles and shorthand observations. Across the table sat Kevin Cho, head of product strategy, mid-40s, Rolex always on display, speech peppered with jargon. Kevin was currently berating a junior analyst for failing to anticipate a trend that had just emerged yesterday. The analyst, Samir, looked like he wanted to disappear. Jaden, sitting 2 chairs down, scribbled into his notebook. Kevin, projects insecurity through blame. Toxicity level, 7. Culture impact, high. Across the room, Amelia sat with her usual poise. She didn't speak unless called on. When she did, her ideas were sharp and clear, but always either dismissed or hijacked. She knew how to walk the tightrope of saying enough, and not too much. Jaden had seen it before, how women like her learned to walk that line, never too bold, never too meek. The meeting ended with Kevin praising Rachel for a campaign that Amelia had outlined weeks ago in a shared doc Jaden had seen. Rachel, all red lipstick and performative modesty, smiled and nodded like she hadn't just stolen someone else's work. Jaden clenched his jaw. Outside the room, in the corridor, Jaden tried to catch up with Amelia. She was walking fast, clutching her folder tightly. "Hey," he said, "that was your idea in there, right? The pivot then position strategy?" She didn't slow down. "Keep your voice down." "But I know what they did," she said, finally stopping. She turned to him, eyes hard but calm. "I also know this company. If I push, I'm difficult. If I stay quiet, I'm weak. So I choose my battles." That wasn't one of them. Jaden didn't answer right away. He wasn't sure what was worse, that she was right, or that she had accepted it. "Don't worry about me," she said after a beat. "This place, it tries to teach you that kindness is weakness, that empathy makes you a target. I'm not giving them that satisfaction." He nodded slowly, watching her walk away. Every day, she looked more like a soldier than a staff member. Back at his desk, Jaden opened a secure document on his private laptop, one connected directly to the board of directors. Each observation went in names, behaviors, red flags. He uploaded a short voice memo from the hallway outside the conference room. Kevin's crude joke at the intern's expense, followed by laughter from 2 senior associates. File, Internal Culture Audit, Week 3. His inbox pinged. A message from the executive assistant to the chairman. When can we expect the first internal behavior report? Jaden typed back. Not yet. I'm not done watching. Later that day, he witnessed it again. Amelia was in the break room, heating up a microwavable rice bowl. 3 other employees stood behind her, Melissa, Jared, and Nick. Perpetual gossipers who always hovered around the edges of drama. Must be nice, Melissa said loudly, getting that close to the intern, playing mentor to the newbies. I guess if you can't rise on merit, just ride the sympathy train, Jared added. Amelia didn't turn. She stirred her rice slowly and kept her expression neutral. Nick chimed in. Maybe she's hoping he'll recommend her when he gets hired somewhere else. Interns bounce around, right? Best to latch on early. Amelia said nothing. Jaden stood at the doorway. None of them noticed him. He watched the way Amelia kept her back straight, eyes focused on the microwave, as though she hadn't just been gutted by words sharpened into knives. He stepped forward. Hey, Amelia, he said clearly, loud enough for the trio to turn. That thing you showed me in the analytics platform? Game changer. Appreciate it. She turned, blinking at the sudden intrusion, but caught the look in his eye and played along. Glad it helped, she replied smoothly. The trio of gossips looked between them, then slowly slinked away, pretending to be on their phones. Jaden lowered his voice. You okay? She gave him a look, half grateful, half tired. You didn't have to do that. I know. They stood there in silence for a moment before she returned to her desk. He remained behind, still watching the microwave, feeling the heat rise in his chest. This wasn't just toxic. It was calculated cruelty wrapped in fake smiles and passive office banter. He no longer needed to wonder if the board had been right in assigning this mission. Lintech wasn't just underperforming because of numbers or trends. It was broken at the human level. And now, Jaden wasn't just observing for the board. He was fighting for her. Amelia stood in the narrow restroom stall, breathing through her nose, her fists clenched around a handful of tissues. The fluorescent lights above buzzed faintly, casting sterile shadows against the chipped tiles. She stared at the back of the door as though it might open into a better world. She hadn't cried in over a year. Not since she got passed over for that leadership training program despite leading the campaign that brought in the highest revenue that quarter. Not since Rachel had told her in private, "You're not leadership material yet, maybe in 5 years." But today cracked something in her that had held steady for too long. It had started with a memo, an internal concept she'd drafted over the weekend. A new strategy for revitalizing Lintech's dying customer engagement model. Inspired by behavioral analytics she'd been tracking secretly after hours. She'd refined it, formatted it, and submitted it to Rachel in confidence Monday morning. By Wednesday, that memo had resurfaced, with her name nowhere to be found. At the team-wide innovation roundtable, Rachel presented it as a breakthrough she'd been developing for a few weeks now. She even added a few deliberate errors so it wouldn't be traced directly back to Amelia's version. The team clapped. Kevin called it a fresh take. The director of operations asked her to send him the slides. Rachel beamed. Amelia sat there, a frozen smile stitched across her face, heart hammering against her ribs. She didn't even remember how she got to the restroom. She just needed a space, any space, that wasn't filled with hypocrisy. The tissue in her hand was soaked now. A gentle knock on the door startled her. "It's me," said a voice. "Jaden." "Amelia?" She inhaled slowly and wiped her face. She opened the door. Jaden stood outside, his expression unreadable. "Are you okay?" he asked, careful not to look too directly at her. She paused, eyes red but dry. "I'm fine. I just needed air." Jaden stepped back to give her room. "I saw what happened in the meeting." Amelia nodded stiffly. "It's not the first time. It shouldn't have happened at all." She gave a short laugh, tired, bitter. "You're still new here. You think truth matters." He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at her with a quiet intensity. "Why do you stay?" She turned to him, her voice raw. "Because if people like me leave, the ones who stay will never change. And because I believe I can still make something of myself. Maybe not today, but someday. Jaden was quiet for a long moment. You will. I promise. She tilted her head. What makes you so sure? Because you care. And that makes you dangerous in a place like this. That night, long after most of the office lights had flickered out, Amelia remained at her desk. She was supposed to finish prepping mock-ups for the upcoming digital campaign. Another task dumped on her without acknowledgement. But she wasn't working. She was staring at a resignation letter. The cursor blinked at her, daring her to finish the last line. Effective immediately. Her finger hovered over the trackpad. Then she looked around. At the office. At the pale gray walls. At the photo of her parents tucked behind her monitor, still smiling, still believing their daughter was destined for more. She deleted the letter. She wasn't done yet. Meanwhile, across the building, the boardroom lights remained dim, except for the glow of a single lamp. Jaden stood alone, reviewing footage. The firm had quietly installed internal surveillance when he arrived, not in private areas, but in public spaces, meetings, and team discussions. It was perfectly legal. And damning. He watched the moment Rachel clicked through Amelia's stolen presentation. He zoomed in on Amelia's face. On her stillness. Her expression was calm, but her eyes were drowning. He fast-forwarded to the hallway footage from earlier that day. Jared and Melissa laughing about how little Amelia's too scared to fight. Nick mimicking her soft voice. Jaden sat back in his chair, fists clenched, face stone cold. This wasn't just mismanagement. This was abuse. He clicked open a secure file on his laptop. Title: Lintech Leadership Restructuring Candidates. He typed a new name into the top of the list. Rivera, Amelia, Acting Director, Employee Culture and Ethics, pending announcement. His finger hovered over the keyboard. Not yet. Not until the others saw the truth. The next morning, Amelia returned to find a note on her desk. No name. Just a folded sticky note with 5 words written in neat, blocky letters. Don't give up just yet. She looked around. No one seemed to be watching, but something in the air felt different. Somewhere in the heart of Lintech, change had started to stir. And though she didn't know it, the man she once thought was a lost intern was preparing to flip the company upside down, with her as the new foundation. The calendar read Friday. But to Amelia, it felt like the end of a long, bruising season, one that had stretched far beyond a week. She sat at her desk, sipping burnt coffee and pretending to review campaign metrics. Her inbox was full of half-polite demands and vague threats disguised as feedback. Rachel had sent her 3 emails before 8 a.m., each more condescending than the last. And yet, Amelia felt something brewing beneath the surface. Something she couldn't name. Then came the email. Subject: Urgent, all-staff town hall at 1 p.m. Mandatory attendance, executive announcement. No details. No sender name. Just a meeting request embedded like a warning shot. The buzz began almost immediately. Slack channels exploded with speculation. Is there a merger? Layoffs? Did Kevin finally get fired? Maybe the new CEO's finally showing his face. Amelia leaned back in her chair. She had almost forgotten, after all the chaos, that Lintech had brought in a new CEO just a few weeks ago. A young guy, supposedly. Board-picked. Mysterious. No one had met him yet. No memos. No official intro. The rumor mill had been churning, but with no photo, no interviews, and no schedule updates, he'd become something like a corporate ghost. So when 1 p.m. came, the entire 10th floor funneled down to the auditorium, whispering and theorizing as they filed into the rows of sleek, modern chairs. The room was cold, designed to be impressive. Giant projection screen. Spotlights. Polished steel fixtures. Amelia sat in the back, out of habit. Rachel sat up front, chatting with Kevin and laughing just a little too loud. Jared, Melissa, and Nick shared a row near the middle, already scrolling their phones like they were bored before it began. The room dimmed. The murmurs died. A tall man stepped onto the stage, flanked by 2 senior board members. His hair was clean-cut now, suit-tailored. No messenger bag. No name tag. Amelia blinked. Her heart dropped. It was Jaden, but not the shy, awkward intern she had taken under her wing. This Jaden stood with presence, unflinching, composed. His eyes swept the room like he had built it. And in a way, he had. He stepped to the mic and spoke. Good afternoon. For those who don't recognize me, my name is Jaden Cole. I've been here for the past month. Though many of you knew me as simply an intern. Gasps rippled through the room. Mouths opened. Whispers turned into disbelief. Rachel's smile vanished. I came undercover, Jaden continued, because the board had concerns. Not about profits, but about people, about culture, integrity, leadership, the things you can't measure on a spreadsheet. He paused. His voice remained calm, but with weight. And what I saw, what I experienced, confirmed every concern. I was ignored, dismissed, mocked, bullied. But more importantly, I saw those same behaviors inflicted on others. On people who've worked here for years. Who've given everything to this company and gotten nothing but cruelty in return. The silence was crushing now. A few rows ahead, Jared sank into his seat. Melissa turned red. Kevin's hand clenched around his pen. Jaden reached into the podium and pulled out a folder. In here, he said, are transcripts, video recordings, emails, documented instances of misconduct, harassment, theft of intellectual property, and unethical management practices. All collected during my time as your so-called intern. He placed the folder down with a soft thud. And I want to make one thing very clear. Change is not coming. It has already begun. Effective immediately, the following individuals are being suspended pending investigation. He began to read names. Kevin, Rachel, Jared, Melissa, Nick, 3 senior managers, 1 HR lead. The room buzzed louder with every name. People glanced at each other in disbelief. Some of the accused stood, demanding explanations. Others sat frozen, pale. Security entered quietly. Calm. Professional. One by one, the individuals were escorted from the room. Not a word from Jaden. Just silence as the wolves were removed from the den. When it was over, Jaden returned to the mic. And now, he said, voice softer, I want to recognize someone else. He looked directly toward the back row. Amelia Rivera. Would you join me on stage, please? She didn't move at first. Thought maybe she had misheard. People turned. All eyes on her. Her legs carried her forward on their own, her mind trailing behind in disbelief. When she reached him, Jaden extended his hand. This woman, he said, was the only person in this company who treated me like I mattered. Not because she knew who I was, but because that's who she is. He turned back to the audience. While others insulted or ignored me, she helped me, defended me, believed in me. She showed me what real leadership looks like, even when she wasn't given a title or a corner office. Amelia stood there, trembling, stunned. Her throat felt tight. Jaden turned back to her. Amelia, I'd like to officially appoint you as Director of Culture and Innovation, a new department we're creating to rebuild this company's core. You'll report directly to me. A full, thunderous applause broke out, genuine, rippling from the back row first. Amelia didn't cry, but her heart felt too big for her chest. That evening, the office was empty, save for 2 people in the executive suite. Jaden stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over the city. Amelia sat on the edge of a new desk, her new desk. You could have told me, she said softly. I needed to see who people really were, Jaden replied. And you were exactly who I hoped someone here would be. She smiled faintly. You planned all of this? He turned to her. Not all. You were the surprise. They stood in the quiet for a while. You changed my life, she whispered. He shook his head. You changed mine first. The nameplate hadn't even arrived yet, but the view alone confirmed it. Amelia Rivera was no longer seated near the printer. She sat now in an executive office, floor-to-ceiling glass behind her, the city stretching endlessly beyond. Her new desk was a deep walnut, polished and free of crumbs or post-it notes left behind by someone else. She wasn't borrowing space anymore. She owned it. For the first 20 minutes, she just sat there, absorbing it all. No phone buzzing. No Rachel hovering. No side glances from co-workers as she walked past. Just quiet, almost surreal in its peace. A knock broke the silence. Jaden stood at her doorway, no badge around his neck now. Just a fitted navy suit, sleeves rolled slightly, holding 2 coffee cups. Figured your first day up here deserved something stronger than the break room sludge. She smiled. You remembered. I remember everything, he replied as he handed her the cup. She accepted it, still amazed by how normal he seemed, even with the weight of $1 billion company on his shoulders. I don't even know what to do first, she admitted. This job. It feels bigger than I am. Jaden leaned against the doorframe, one hand tucked into his pocket. You're not here because I felt sorry for you, he said plainly. You're here because you're the first person I've met who understands what real leadership means. You didn't just survive Lintech. You kept your dignity intact while doing it. Now I need you to help rebuild it. She exhaled. No pressure. Plenty of pressure, he said with a grin. But the right kind. By the afternoon, her inbox had transformed. It no longer overflowed with passive-aggressive requests or disguised reprimands. Now it held invitations, collaborations, proposals, messages of congratulations from people she hadn't heard from in months. A few were genuine. Some, she knew, were just strategic now that she had power. But it didn't matter. She wasn't here to be liked. She was here to fix things. Her first act came quietly. She compiled a list of every junior employee who had been passed over, silenced, or denied development opportunities. She contacted HR and demanded they revive the leadership mentorship program. This time led by people with actual empathy, not titles. By 3 p.m., she was in a meeting with facilities, asking why there were no accessible quiet spaces for staff to take mental health breaks. By 4 p.m., she had scheduled one-on-ones with every department's entry-level team. By 5 p.m., people were whispering again, but this time with hope. That evening, as the building emptied, she and Jaden stood once again in the executive suite, overlooking the glittering skyline. He handed her a slim leather folder. This just came from the board. She opened it. Inside was a letter, formal, embossed, official. It confirmed her position, but also included something she hadn't expected. A seat on the Employee Experience Advisory Council, a board-level entity with real influence over company culture and ethics. She looked up at him. You're giving me policy power? You've earned it, he said. Besides, I don't want people afraid of this office anymore. I want them to want to walk in here. She smiled. You really believe we can change this place? Jaden leaned against the window frame. I don't just believe it. I've seen it. You saw me, she corrected softly. He nodded. I did. And now they will too. 2 weeks later, Amelia stood before a room full of new interns, 10 of them. Young. Nervous. One holding a folder the same way Jaden once had. Welcome to Lintech, she said, her voice calm and clear. You'll hear that this place is competitive, that it's fast-paced. And it is. But what you might not hear enough is that this place is also yours to shape. One of the interns raised a hand. What department are you in? She smiled, almost wistfully. I'm in the department that didn't exist when I first walked through these doors. The department that's here to protect what matters, people. They clapped, and she handed them each a small envelope. Inside was a message she'd typed herself. 5 simple words on company stationery. Don't give up just yet. That night, back in her office, she paused to take it all in. The desk, the plaque, the schedule filled with purpose. She touched the window, eyes catching her reflection. She still looked like herself. But the woman in the glass now had something she hadn't had in a long time. Power. And even more rare in places like Lintech. Permission to use it for good. The sun rose slowly over the city, casting a soft golden hue across the Lintech building's mirrored windows. On the 12th floor, Amelia Rivera stood by her office window, watching the light crawl across the skyline. It was quiet, her favorite time of day. Before meetings. Before politics. Before the rhythm of corporate life returned with its noise and expectations. But Lintech wasn't the same beast anymore. Not since the reveal. Not since she stepped into the light. The past 6 months had rewritten the company's DNA. Gone were the whispered insults in break rooms, the constant undermining, the unchecked arrogance. Gone were the hollow diversity seminars and HR lip service. In their place, intentional culture design. Something Amelia had made her mission, brick by careful brick. It wasn't perfect. Not yet. But the change was real. One by one, she had brought in voices that had long been silenced. People who were once ignored were now at the table. Entry-level staffers who once disappeared into the system now presented directly to department heads. And when those department heads acted like gatekeepers, Amelia reminded them who had the keys now. It wasn't revenge. It was restoration. Downstairs, Jaden moved through the corridors not like a king, but like a gardener, observing, listening, building something sustainable. He didn't dominate the space like his predecessors. Instead, he empowered people to own it. Every floor had seen at least one manager replaced. Several former bullies resigned before they could be held accountable, unable to thrive in the new climate of transparency. He hadn't forgotten why he started all of it. Every executive meeting, he made sure Amelia was seated beside him. He called on her voice first. When board members pushed back on her soft approach, Jaden pushed harder, until her name was respected, not tolerated. Their relationship remained deeply professional, but beneath that professionalism, a bond had formed. Not romantic, not yet. Something rarer. Trust. The kind forged not through shared strategy, but through surviving something rotten, and refusing to become bitter because of it. One morning, Amelia stood outside conference room A, watching a team of new employees present to a full leadership panel. Among them was Samir, the analyst who had once been berated in front of Jaden for not anticipating trends. Now, Samir stood tall, pitching a product integration model he had built from scratch. He spoke with clarity. Confidence. Amelia smiled. She remembered how small he had looked that day. How easily talent could be crushed under ego. Not anymore. After the meeting, Samir passed by and stopped. I don't think I ever said thank you. For what? For making it possible to speak without fear. She nodded. Don't waste it. Later that afternoon, she found herself in a rare, quiet moment with Jaden in his office. The blinds were half drawn, the skyline glowing in the distance. He poured 2 glasses of mineral water and slid one to her. You know what today is? He asked. She tilted her head. Budget proposal day? He chuckled. That too. But also the anniversary of your first day here. She blinked. Seriously? Yup. You walked in 7 years ago today. Sat near the printer. Wore that blue jacket with the coffee stain. She laughed, really laughed. You remember that? I was in the building that day. Final round of interviews with the board. I watched from the top floor while they gave me a tour. Saw you helping a maintenance guy carry a broken supply cart into storage. She shook her head in disbelief. You saw that? I saw a lot, but I didn't understand the value of it until later. He held up his glass. To those who move in shadows until the sun finds them. She smiled and clinked her glass gently against his. That evening, Amelia left late. The building was mostly empty, except for a few late-night teams burning through deadlines. She walked the halls, now quieter, softer. Posters on the wall showed employee stories. The break room had fresh plants. Even the HR department now had a couch for drop-ins. Before stepping into the elevator, she glanced back at the spot where she had first met Jaden, lost and awkward in the lobby. It felt like another lifetime. But the truth was that moment had changed everything. She turned back toward the elevator doors, stepped inside, and pressed the button. 12G. As the elevator hummed downward, she caught her reflection in the mirror. No more hunched shoulders. No hesitation. She had become the woman she once hoped someone would notice. Not because she clawed her way to power, but because when she had nothing, She chose to lift someone else. And in doing so, she had lifted herself. From shadows to sunrise. Her story was no longer whispered in corners. It was written into the walls. And Lintek would never be the same.